Next is a panel titled Architecting Hyper-Resilient Cyber Defense in Hybrid and Multi-Cloud Environment. And to lead this panel, we have the Director of Cybersecurity Products Development at Salam. Please, put your hand together for Mohammed AlHarthi.
Thanks. Salam alaikum. Good afternoon. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you today, joined by a wonderful group of leaders in cybersecurity space to share their insights in today's panel titled as Architecting Cybersecurity Resilient for Hybrid and Multi-Cloud Environments. Our aim today is to focus on practical implementation of the best practices based on most prominent cybersecurity trends and risk landscape. Please join me in welcoming Ali Marwani, Senior Solutions Engineer at SOC Radar, Naji Raib, Area Director of South MIA at Security Scorecard, Taimur, Head of Security, Threat Monitoring, Response, and Research at Byzone. Have a seat, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And let's start with a short round of self-introduction, starting with you, Ali.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Mohammed, and thanks a lot for having us. I'm Ali Marwani, Senior Solution Engineer at SOC Radar, and it's a pleasure to meet you and looking forward for this interesting panel for today.
Thank you. Salam alaikum. Good afternoon, everybody. This is my second time actually participating in this panel discussion. My name is Naji Raib. I work for a company called Security Scorecard. Been in this field for about 15 years now, I think a little bit more. Background is in cyber threat intelligence, and for the last 5 years specializing in risk.
Hello, everybody. As I already mentioned, my name is Timur Khabarov. I am working at the Byzone company, and I am the director of Cyber Threat Monitoring, Response, and Research Department. I am responsible for the product portfolio related to the security operations like MDR services, DFIR services, EDR, SIEM, and a lot of other products that can help with security operations. It is a pleasure to be here on this conference and this panel discussion with you guys. I think it will be a great session.
Nice. So, to give you an introduction, the MENA region is facing a significant increase in targeted cyber attacks. This is driven by a rapid adoption of technology, digital transformation, and cloud solutions. The region is economically growing, which is associated with a lot of risk. As we focus on architecting hyper-resilient and cyber defense for secure and hybrid and multi-cloud environments, it is crucial to recognize the proactive measure being taken. Organizations across MENA are responding to robustly growing threats, with cybersecurity investment rise from 22 billion in this year, forecasted to be 34 billion by 2028. This underscores the region's commitment to building resilient defenses that can withstand the complexities of interconnected digital ecosystems. And to start the discussion with you, Ali, I'll start. For organizations increasingly adopt hybrid and multi-cloud environments to enhance agility, scalability, and complexity of securing these diverse infrastructures, it's growing significantly. So could you please start by giving us a brief overview of multi-cloud environment, the threat landscape evolving in this area, particularly in the context of hybrid multi-cloud environments?
Yeah, so actually, based on Gartner report that by 2027, 70% of organizations will be depending on cloud platform services and providers. And there were a lot of factors and drivers that led to this rally and running after migrating to the cloud. First of all, it could be the SaaS. Lots of organizations and companies, they are now giving services online and over the cloud. You have, for example, especially the COVID that hit in 2020, you know, organizations not only migrated their online platforms for their audience, but also to cater for their employees, you know, to embrace working remotely. So even business critical and internal platforms and tools, they were moved to the cloud. So given that, a new threat landscape has been introduced, a bigger threat landscape, more digital footprint, and more assets they are exposed to the internet online. In addition to that, given that you have now a lot of services, a lot of tools running online, there should be a communication. Could be one-way, two-way communication within these assets. So what is the first go-to? APIs. This is another way, this is another asset, another door that threat actors and malicious hackers would exploit. Could be API misconfiguration, could be weak ciphers within the APIs. It could be APIs that are not compliant with compliance standards, regulatories. Another also type of threats that organizations might encounter is their supply chain, the third-party vendors, what they have around them, their radius. Given that they are relying a lot on like data centers and cloud platforms, they are always to keep an eye on the threats that they might, emerge from their third-party vendors. Their digital risk protection is also, they have to take it into consideration. And on top of that, lots of technologies involved, new skills they have to add in their toolbox, new skills that they have to learn. And of course, threat actors, they have to learn new skills as well. So yeah, I think those are like the main threats that we have to look into.
Nice. Those are a lot of avenues associated with cloud and multi-cloud environments. So let me ask you especially about the challenges. How do organizations address challenges of integrating security across multiple cloud platforms and on-prem systems, particularly when it comes to maintaining visibility and control over data?
Okay. Unified dashboard, that's the first thing. Not to get overwhelmed and bombarded with a lot of notifications, a lot of alerts, to reduce as much as possible false positives and to reduce the noise. Especially if you want to, to implement different cloud platforms technologies. Always keep an eye on your supply chain, implement supply chain intelligence tools. Always keep an eye on your digital risk protection, your attack surface, implementing attack surface management tools, trying to see what do you have exposed online, try to reduce as much as possible shadow IT, trying to see what are like the weaknesses that you have in your digital assets, vulnerability scanning, especially API scanning to check misconfigurations, vulnerabilities that might be introduced, the ways like threat actors would exploit. Always check, keep an eye on the dark web. Given that you're moving to the cloud, lots of accounts might be compromised and exposed. I mean, we have recent incidents happened just from a cloud provider. Always see that you're implementing strong and robust security rules, identity and access management, especially that now security is shared. You're not the only one who's implementing security programs on your asset, but also there's a share for your cloud providers and cloud platforms to secure their own infrastructure. So that's why it's always important to keep an eye on them.
Nice, nice. So I'll go to you, Taimur, since you share similar background with Ali Marwani. Speaking of challenges, we would like to ask additionally, what strategies can be employed to avoid vendor lock-in while ensuring interoperability between different cloud providers?
So I will be quite obvious to answer this question. If you want to avoid vendor lock, use more than one vendor. Use more than one cloud providers. You should adopt multi-cloud strategy. But it's easy to say, go to multiple cloud. In the fact, it's quite difficult because before to go to multiple clouds, your applications and your team should be ready for this one. You should do a lot of work in advance before this, and only after that go to the one cloud, another cloud, and so on. So, and there's two areas where you should pay attention. The first one is how you develop your applications, and the second one, how you manage your cloud infrastructure and how you manage your applications that are already deployed in the cloud. So let's start from the first area about how develop application. Main thing I would like to say that application you want to migrate to cloud should be initially cloud native. There is a term cloud native that used widely. What does it mean? It means that application, the services that this application use, like databases, I don't know, key-value storages, and so on, should be prepared in so way that gives you opportunity to simply to simplify the deployment of this application in the cloud, to simplify the usage of this application in the cloud, and so on. And I have a good story from Russia, from our country. We have some kind of government cloud that was initially created for deployment of different information system of different government agencies. And after some time, it became mandatory for government agency to deploy all application only in this cloud. So they have a lot of services, a lot of system, and they have to transfer the system to this government cloud. And it's a huge problem. It was a big challenge, and it's a challenge still now. It still continues.
A lot of dependencies on the cloud.
A lot of legacy. Application initially was developed not cloud native, and it was a problem to migrate them to cloud. And so if you develop your application and think about the cloud, but your application is not ready for cloud, the first step you should do before migration, change the application firstly, and only after changing the application, migrate it. Because if you don't do it, you will have a lot of problem in the future with this. It's about cloud native. The second thing, and how you manage your applications, how you manage your cloud. You should use unified approach for different cloud, for management, for continuous integration, continuous deployment, for monitoring, and so on. You should use the same thing for different clouds. What does it mean? It means that you shouldn't use proprietary technologies that are provided by cloud. You should use some common technologies, like, for example, Terraform, for example, Ansible and Prometheus for monitoring, and other well-known tools that not specific, that cloud agnostic. It gives you opportunity to easily manage multiple cloud, 1, 2, 3, and so on. It's very important, because if you don't use it, if you use proprietary technologies provided by cloud, the next cloud where you will go, you're faced with the problems, because you should build from the scratch. Monitoring, backup, I think deployment, continuous integration, and so on.
Nice. So, speaking of handling it and the strategies for handling and dealing with multi-cloud environments, what are the key strategies for ensuring redundancy and implementing effective failover mechanisms in hybrid and multi-cloud environments?
So I agree, it's a good question, because when you have a multiple clouds, there's a problem how to manage the traffic between these cloud sites, how to provide fast restore in case of failure, and so on. First thing I would like to say is use, for example, containers or some other technologies that gives you opportunity to build application more portable. If you have portable application, it gives you opportunity to deploy very fast in case of failure. You don't need to deploy a lot of services like databases, I don't know, key-value storages like message bus and so on. You take your container from your registry, deliver this container to new site, deploy it, and everything is work. So portable application is very important for redundancy and fast restore in case of failure. The next thing is how to manage the traffic between different sites. There's a lot of well-known technical solutions for this, like load balancing, like DNS failure technologies. For example, I think everybody know about this, and I don't want to spend a lot of time to go deeply to how these technologies works and so on. But one thing that I would like to say and pay your attention in terms of cloud resistancy and failure, it's a thing you may not think about because it's very a rare situation and not many people, not many companies around the world faced with this problem. It's a situation that we have in Russia because of conflict, you know, which conflict I speak about. We have a lot of companies who used very well-known cloud providers like Google, Amazon, Azure, and a lot of other. But when conflict started, during some months, almost all of them go out and stop the business in Russia. And all these companies who had infrastructure in the cloud, who put all eggs in the one bucket, had a lot of problems. And right now, in Russia, we know one important thing when you go to the multi-cloud strategy. If you're going to use multiple cloud, at least one of them, one cloud that you're going to use, should be local. Should be local, provided by a local company, not by worldwide company who have local infrastructure. I mean local company that originated from your country and operate in this country. Because different situations, it's very difficult to forecast such situation. But it's possible in any country. Because of geopolitical situation, some vendors stop to work with you. So that's why if you use multiple clouds, one of them should be local cloud. And it's my advice for everybody. As I said, you may not think about it, but according to our experience, it was very, very important.
Okay, so we usually here focus on localizing the technology. I can relate now that localizing the cloud, also hyperscaler cloud, is a strategic factor. So coming to you, Naji, speaking of strategies again, how do best practices for data protection, encryption, and secure data transfer play a role in these strategies? Additionally, how should organizations navigate compliance and regulatory considerations to ensure their architecture remain resilient and secure?
Thank you very much for this. So I want to take it a little bit from a different angle, right? So when you look at, since the digital transformation, it used to be a little bit of a simple architecture for companies. They used to have their own devices, their own LAN, and it's quite easy to communicate with the internet via gateway, simple as this. Digital transformation pushed companies to move towards the cloud in different manners. It's not mainly an only application, but you rely on third parties for every single thing, right? So your HR tools is online, your payment processes, your portal login, whatever it could be, these third parties and these services are held and held by a third party. So I think the gentleman here mentioned obviously cloud services, which is quite important because you host your data in them. But when it comes down to other services, it's also cloud. Now we see a lot of SaaS services that are happening right now. That digital transformation has moved the attack surface from an unknown attack surface to an expanded and a known attack surface. We're using assets, servers, whatever the services that you use are outside, hosted somewhere else, you don't know. The company must be or might be here, hosted here. They tell you that, but at the end of it, you might see that they also connected to an AWS instance or an Azure instance or whatever it could be. So the theory behind it, when it comes down to regulators now, they all push in for what we call a continuous monitoring of third parties. Why? Before that, it used to be traditionally known as vendor risk management. You send one questionnaire per year, they fit the requirements, good to go, and you work with them for a year. But because of this digital transformation and movements of IPs and movements of obviously servers. You don't even know if today you're hosted here and then tomorrow you will be hosted there because it's dynamic. That has led most of companies or organizations into not knowing where is their assets and the data. So I might have a range of IP from a hosting service. Tomorrow I have a totally different range of IPs. I might be hosting this server and I'm sharing it with other companies. Tomorrow I might be sharing it with another company. And the thing that you need to be aware of, if I host my service in a hosting service, let's say a cloud service or whatever, let's say a website, and that server goes down, my website goes down too. So yeah, so it's not just you're looking good now and that's about it. You have to continuously monitor that third party.
So third-party risk is contagious.
Absolutely. So we've seen that several times. We've seen that, I don't want to mention names, but we've seen it in 2020, we've seen it in 2021, we've seen it from big vendors as well. And lately, one vendor has paralyzed a lot of companies. They stopped basically working and they even shut down for a day or two. Business-wise, it means that you're losing money, you're losing trust from your customers, and potentially if you're a government agency, you're not accessible, right? So it even hits potentially the critical national infrastructure. What I meant by this, when you look at SAMA, when you look at basically in Europe, DORA, NIS2, they all push in to monitor on a continuous level the ICT vendors. Not the paper delivery guy, but the ICT server, my tech stack, my third parties that I rely on, my SaaS services, my PaaS, and so on. So you mentioned earlier in the first bit of the question, encryption, data protection, and protecting the data in transit and rest. Yeah, they are important, but it's not fully it. You got to maintain a good observation view on all the critical third parties that you rely on for business continuity. When you go back to those regulations, they divided critical vendors as the ones that you share data with, critical data, as the one that you rely on for the business and operation of your daily work, and the ones that could damage your reputation, and finally the ones that connect to your network. These are critical ones that you need to have a full observation on at all times.
Nice. So can you share any success stories or case studies of organizations that have successfully built resilient cyber defenses in hybrid and multi-cloud environments?
Yeah, I mean, I had the fortunate, I would say, opportunity to work with large organization and companies in here and somewhere else as well. And I've seen the developments of their strategy to deal with their digital transformation. Back again into the vendor risk, because they relied a lot on those critical vendors. They have implemented new strategies on continuous monitoring. They also put in place what they call a vetting of the third parties. Things have shifted from a traditional vendor risk management to what we call now vendor detection and response. So everybody here in the presence, they know about EDRs, which is endpoint detection and response. But because we also rely on those third parties, they become like devices, they become like assets to us. And the term vendor detection and response became life. So I need to be always aware of the risk approaching from my third parties. These organizations that had a successful strategy has implemented this vendor detection and response. Obviously, the big gap in our, I would say, industry is human resources. There is a big gap in the skills, right? So you have to outsource it. You don't know if the other ones are capable of doing it. Maybe they do it in a different matter. You are here, maybe there's a cultural clash between how you do things. It's quite tough to do it. But what we did realize is that when you put a specific team to deal with the vendors and you give them a right tooling to understand what are the risks coming from them to your organization, this has had a life-changing moment for those organizations. Like, for example, I'm going to use Microsoft, but some companies don't care about how Microsoft looks like as a whole, but they do care about Office 365 because they use it every day. That takes us into the tech stack spectrum, where you also need to make sure monitoring your tech stack is also key. We've seen this lately. There was a CVE about, I don't want to mention the name, but that CVE has shaken up a lot of organizations because they knew that that vendor is used by a lot of companies. So that, just to finalize that point, these successful organizations has implemented a vendor detection and response that helped them understand and anticipate the risk that comes from these critical vendors. At the end of it, if you increase the resilience of your vendor, you reduce your risk. Simple as this.
I like it. So increasing the resilience of vendors would reduce your
Your own risk.
I like it. So to all of you, my guests, can you share some of the key lessons learned during managing hybrid and multi-cloud environments, starting with you, Ali?
So just to mention something here that definitely when it comes to security and hybrid resilience, there's no silver bullet for that. There are best practices, but we have to take lots of things into consideration, budgetary concerns, the workforce that you have, the regulations, the governmental regulations, the compliance standards, but there's always a starting point for that. And then you can build it gradually and you can mature your hyper resilience from just responding to responding and keep yourself operable whilst you're encountering an attack. But best practices could be, I think we all agree and mentioned, is to always keep an eye on your third-party vendors, to make sure that your supply chain is, you're aware what is happening in your supply chain. Just always monitoring your threat landscape, the industry, the campaigns that are targeting the industry that you are operating in, the campaigns that are targeting the region that you are operating in, then the monitoring the campaigns that they are targeting even the country that you are operating in, just to make sure that you're securing your back, and then you can build it gradually. Applying vulnerability scanners, API scanners is very important. Implementing also SIM and SOAR solutions to automate the incident response so your team can focus more on the more complicated security tasks and hyper resilience tasks.
Nice. Thanks, Ali. So going to you, Naji, can you share some of the key lessons learned from such experience?
It's not a simple answer though, because obviously it's not a simple question. There is no magical wand that will just cure it fully, but what we've seen that basically has prevented certain attacks. First of all, information sharing. Be part of an ISAC. So for example, there's a lot of companies that are part of their own industry ISAC. And the role of the ISAC is to help the industry understand what are the threats facing them rather than facing everybody. So you get a specific view of what could be or what I could be facing as a company or a major company in this specific industry. Number two, you have to simplify a little bit the language that you deal with for your management. I mean, when you go sometimes to the management asking for budget for a specific solution or tool or whatever, they don't have the same perception as you have, Mr. Technical Person, right? So you have to explain the risk in a simple dialogue with the management for them to understand the impact that it could have on the business. Because at the end of the day, a CISO or CIO, their job is to maintain the profitability of the company while not enduring a breach or an incident. And for that, it's quite difficult to keep the balance. And third, which is quite important, I would say, is to maintain a continuous visibility on your exposed assets, which is the attack surface, and the third-party risk manager or third parties that you rely on as a critical vendors.
Nice. Timur?
So I a little bit covered the topic when I answered on the question about vendor lock, and a lot of my experience that I faced in the past related to this one, to the vendor lock and to the operating in the multi-cloud environment. I told you one story from my previous experience. On the previous job, I was responsible for research and development in some security operations center, and one of my responsibility was infrastructure.
Nice.
Initially, we have local infrastructure and provide security services, security operation only in Russia. But when we decided to go outside and provided services outside, we faced with the situation when we need to deploy infrastructure outside in the region where we go to provide the service. And we decided to use, of course, cloud, because it's the easiest way to deploy infrastructure instead of building own data centers and so on. So the first time we decided to use, as I remember, it was Microsoft Azure. Our infrastructure, our applications that we used to build security operations center and to provide service was our own developed, and they wasn't adopted for cloud usage. So the first case when we go to cloud to build this infrastructure to provide service at cell site, it was a hell to deploy this infrastructure, to build it and make it operational, make it work. So after some months, business decided that we need to go to another region. And in this region, it wasn't possible to use Microsoft Azure for some reason, because Azure didn't have a local presence in this region. So we decided to use Amazon. And but we remember the hell that we had when deploying infrastructure in Azure. And before to deploy in Amazon, we make a lot of changes in infrastructure, in the applications, and only after that started to build infrastructure in Amazon.
Nice.
So some months ago, again, business said we need to go to a new region. It's Asia region, and which cloud we have in Asia? Alibaba.
Okay.
Of course, we already have our application and our infrastructure ready to deploy in the cloud. It was quite fast for us to deploy the infrastructure in the Alibaba cloud. But what we didn't do, we didn't think about how to operate all these different clouds, because we had a separate approaches for different clouds. Original approach for Azure, for Amazon, for
a multi-cloud.
Yes, and what we started to do, we started to unify our management approach. We stopped to use monitoring services, backup services, and other type of services that used to operate infrastructure provided by cloud. We deployed our own on-premise Prometheus, Ansible, Terraform, and so on, and started to unify the management approach for different clouds. Because we had 3 cases when we should go to the cloud, and it wasn't the last case. The first situation wasn't the last. After some months, business decided to go in one more region, and we was ready for this one, because we changed the infrastructure, we changed the applications, and we changed our operations, how to manage and operate the infrastructure.
Nice, nice. So as we wrap up this insightful discussion on architecting hyper-resilient cyber defense in hybrid and multi-cloud environments, it is clear that the journey to robust security is both complex and critical. We've heard valuable insight and perspectives on overcoming challenges, leveraging innovative strategies, and learning from real-world experiences. The evolving threat landscape demands that we stay vigilant, adaptive, and collaborative in our approaches. I would like to encourage all of you to take the insights shared today back to your organizations and think critically about how you can strengthen your cyber defense strategies, whether it is enhancing redundancy, improving data protection, or navigating regulatory requirements. Now is the time to act. Let's continue to share the knowledge, foster collaboration, and push the boundaries of what's possible in securing our digital environments. To the audience, thank you for your time today, and we hope that this segment was helpful to you. Enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.